We are back here with Ashley from St. Louis Park for another conversation at MinnSPRA for the spring conference. Ashley, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Stick shift.
We used to do Awkward Turtle in
Oh
high
yeah,
school.
yeah,
Have you
yeah.
done that one?
Yes,
Yeah.
the like little
Yep.
paw.
All
Not
sorts
paw.
of great ones.
I don't know. The
The
leg.
flipper, I guess?
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly. Well, I've known you for a little while, and we've worked together kind of on a couple projects, but, in the time that I've been maybe away from school districts, you've really grown in what you're doing. So could you just tell me a little bit about your journey in school communications and
Yeah.
kind of where you started and how you're here today?
Well, I think that's a really good question because I think when we first met, I was still in Osseo
Yes.
area schools.
Yeah.
And then I moved to St. Louis Park Public Schools as the communications senior specialist after about a year. And then was there for about a year and a half before being promoted to the director of communications there.
Yep.
So definitely have moved pretty rapidly through 3 years of experience within schools.
Yeah. And what has been maybe the most surprising thing for you about moving from kind of that individual contributor role, right, like a specialist role, into that director role? Like, what's been one of the biggest jumps for you?
One of the biggest jumps for me, I'd have to say, is around budget. So now I'm a budget manager.
Yeah.
So you get to see a lot more of the in-depth. I think as a communication specialist, I saw a lot about the budget because of what we would be communicating to our public.
Right.
But getting my own set of numbers and
Yep.
trying to allocate out what goes to different programs, services, and how do we best meet the needs of our students
Yep.
through our communication channels, through our own finances, right? Does put some different pressure and some different learning
Yeah.
to be thinking strategically about how we do that.
Well, and it's interesting because when you're in, like a public entity or a government entity, whether it's schools or, similar, it's not like you can just go out and make more sales to increase your budget. You have your budget. It is what it is for the year. And so as challenges arise, or as you're sitting there looking at this number going, how do I allocate things? Like, you kind of have to look into that crystal ball a little bit and
You do.
guess what's going to happen over the next year.
So you have to look strategically, right, of like forecasting out to the future. Then I also think about how you develop your relationships also
Yeah.
with partners and vendors. And I know that's part of what we're doing here today
Yeah.
because sometimes you can work out agreements, right, terms and conditions to
Right.
better service and have more of the platforms that you might like to provide those opportunities. So that's really important to me, is developing and deepening our relationships with our vendors, because I don't necessarily consider us to be, where it's not just I'm paying you, you're providing me a service.
It's not just
a
transactional.
relationship.
Exactly.
And how we work together ultimately gets us the desired outcome and long-term success for both of our entities as a school district and
Yeah.
as a partner.
That's a really interesting point. And I think one of the things that's always stood out to me, the way vendor partners work with school districts, is 99 times out of 100, there's someone in that company who's got kids in a school district. So it's personal, right? Like, when you serve schools, when you're working with school districts, like, you may even be your school district you're working with, and it's your kids being affected. So
Yeah.
there's more skin in the game, I think, a little bit.
It's true, and I think we've even recently, we're starting to plan this end of school year celebration for our staff.
Yeah.
And I've been calling up different event production companies, and one of them was like, I said, would you like to see the space before you make any commitments? And he goes, oh no, my kid graduated from the high school. We know what it's like. And I was like, oh, that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so of course he was more willing to work with us,
Sure.
and also was familiar with us already.
Yeah,
So
win-win.
that's part of how we build our legacy too.
I love that. Yeah. What have been budgets have surprised you? What's something that's challenged you? And I know that comms is challenging for everybody right now in 2025. But as you've stepped into that director role, like, what's a challenge that you've had to face?
That's such a good question too, because I think similarly to budget, but back in the macro lens. We are currently in unprecedented times with
Yeah.
what we're seeing in public education, and particularly around the finances of education. So we're experiencing potential $2 million cuts
Yep.
or reductions that we're trying to make. We're also now undetermined, right, on what our federal funding looks like,
Right.
and how we plan for that. But the aspects of communication. So we've already made some changes within our district that we believe are in the best interest of our students. Now, with that, it still impacts everyone's lives. It impacts them deeply and on a personal level. And so part of being the communicator is getting people on board to that change.
Yeah.
That's not always easy, right? And how we tell that story to get people there. I think we're in a place right now where we need to showcase some of the wins and some of the success of the decisions that are being made. So reductions in gym class, for
Yep.
example, showcasing why this reduction is actually helpful for us. So one of the situations we have is we currently are having gym 5 days a week for our elementary students. But 2 classes are in the gym at one time. So it's about 55 students. It's a lot of kids in the
Yeah.
gym. You're more likely to have accidents and
Right.
injuries.
Yeah.
So one of the recommendations that actually came from teachers was to go down to single classes. But we don't have the space or the manpower to do that.
Yeah.
So what that meant was moving to single classes, but on a rotation. So we don't have gym 5 days a week anymore. But students get the opportunity to learn skills deeply,
Yeah.
the fine motor skills that I think we want students
And
to
if
have.
all you hear is we've gone from 5 days a
Yep.
week to rotation, and you're not hearing the rest of the story of the benefits that are coming along with that.
You feel that hurt,
Yeah.
right? Like you feel
Yeah.
the loss that comes with that decision. So I think we're thinking about how do we creatively show this is what movement looks like within our school day, whether that's through video, whether that's through stories,
Yeah.
whether we're showcasing, our girls' flag football team. We are one of the first in the state, and so
Yep.
that's like a really great thing that's happening at our high school level.
That's awesome.
So, and if we want to continue things like that, we have to start with our youngest learners to teach them how to do the sport effectively. But one of the great things that we do is actually position our operations folks to do research on what is impacting. So our athletics team actually looked at why female athletes that are women of color are not opting into sports. And some of the things that they found was things like, well, I don't know how to do it. I'm not going to be successful at
Yeah.
it, right? I don't see myself reflected
Yeah.
in teachers, coaches, right? So how do we start to change that? Right, when you think about at the level of where we're like, yes, we're facing reductions. Yes, we're in a position where we have to make some tough decisions. But also this decision that we made around PE doesn't necessarily significantly
Right.
impact the budget, but maybe it could change that outcome for seeing more girls participating
Yeah.
in those sports.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
ultimately good thing to do. But all of those pieces, weaving them together in a story, we're doing nuggets.
That's where the communications art comes into play.
Yep.
And figuring out the best way to tell that story. Yeah. Can you tell me just a little bit about your connection with MinnSPRA and why MinnSPRA is a great organization for communicators in Minnesota to be a part of, school communicators?
Well, that's a great entity. Why I ended up getting involved in MinnSPRA is I don't actually see too many individuals who look like me within the profession of communication. It was important for me to think about how, as I progress in my career, how I'm creating a runway for individuals who could potentially follow me into profession.
Yeah.
So that's why I ended up getting involved in MinnSPRA, and I've been really fortunate to be surrounded by other professionals from different school districts who have elevated me within the organization. So I ran for board, was a new professional in 2023, maybe. I
Yep.
can't remember.
I
At
think I
some
remember that.
point,
Yeah.
yes. I haven't had a long career in schools. I should probably remember these things. But then from now, moving into the president-elect role for the next school year.
Yeah.
So MinnSPRA has provided me opportunities on a personal level to get better connected with others within the profession, but it's also helped me to elevate my career in a way that visually allows for an opportunity for other people to see themselves, right? And I think we're starting to see MinnSPRA just get a little bit more diverse,
Yeah.
which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
And not just within racial equity, but also within gender, within ability. I think we're on our way to start seeing a more diverse array of professionals that better reflects our students that we're serving.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and bringing in, I've seen more people from rural districts starting to connect with and engage with MinnSPRA, which is another area of diversity that I think always gets talked about. I'm curious, just what advice would you give to a young professional who is interested in kind of growing their communications career in schools, is like, MinnSPRA, I'm not sure, it seems like a big commitment or whatnot? I think you're a great example of someone who just kind of came in and took the bull by the horns and was like, I'm going to make this mine. What advice would you give to someone?
Say yes and ask lots of questions.
Yeah.
So especially in early career, I think you are learning a lot of different skills too as you go. I think many of us have become multi-skilled practitioners where we are also our school photographers, our social media managers, our writers, our crisis communicators. So in order to gain the skills, you have to say yes to learning them. And so whether that comes through MinnSPRA and you're asked, do you want to serve on conference plan? You say yes, right? And also being mindful of like taking care of yourself, because there is a reality, especially in early career, that you can work yourself to burnout. So I'm mindful of that too. But yes, saying more to different opportunities that are coming your way to grow and develop is a really important thing, and asking lots of questions, because that's how you get better connected with people, is through those questions. It's easy to say, yes, I'm coming, and sitting in the back of the room. But if you don't ask somebody like, hey, how are you?
Right.
I would love to learn more about your district. Oh, you passed a referendum. How did you do that? You're not going to learn more in the depth that I think you can as a new professional.
Say yes so that you can learn the skills that you need to gain. I love that. That's awesome advice. Awesome. Thank you, Ashley, for sitting down and chatting.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it so much.
Good to see you.
You too. All right.